Morning. Today is Saturday, July 22nd, 2023. Yesterday I finished my 19th of 28 radiation treatments. Booyah. We're single numbers, folks. Finally, there is an end to all this coming up. So to review, side effects, still a little bit of neuropathy going on, fingers and toes. Toes when the room is sort of cool. Lately I've been in a lot of air-conditioned places. So there is where I feel it, and then when I'm not in places where there's no air conditioning, I'm not feeling it, duh. But as far as the fingers go, neuropathy-wise, there's still that numbness. On a scale of 1 to 10, maybe around a 1 or 2, it's not bad, but it's there. Other side effects, there are really none from the radiation to speak of, and I'll review one of them here in a second, where it's that sunburn feeling. I'm feeling that maybe a little bit, but definitely not unbearable at all. No real loose stools to speak of, knock on wood. That's about it for those side effects. There really aren't a whole lot to deal with during the radiation. Met with Dr. Fossum on Monday, which is typical. I'll meet with him every Monday after my radiation treatments. It's so funny that when I get there in the mornings, he's getting there to work too, so I've run into him in the hallway a couple of times. It's so funny to see a doctor in a rush. It's awesome. They're really intense, and I've noticed it a couple of times when they're all headed somewhere. They're very, gotta get there. I don't know if they train you that way or what, but they're all very focused, I guess. It's kind of funny. Anyhow, met with him on Monday, says everything's going great. I asked him about a report card of where we are. He said there's no real way to tell with the radiation. That there's a dosage that they zap. I don't know how they keep track of it, but whatever dosage they're using is what they use for the duration of the radiation treatments. They won't really know anything until afterwards when they track me on whether or not the cancer has come back or not. So we're all assuming that everything's moving along well and the dosages are correct, but there's really no telling as far as the radiation goes. Then, Wednesday I met with Dr. Kozin, which I've been dying to do, as you know. One of the first things that she went over was the refill situation. She goes, I keep getting these refills requests from your specialty pharmacists for the capecitabine pills, the chemo pills, and I don't know why they want them, because I told them, you have everything you need. There's no further treatment, yay, after the radiation. So all I got to do is ride this out, and my treatments are done. So anyhow, like I said, 9 more days. So radiation will be done on August 3rd. Chemo pills will be done on August 3rd. No more of any of that stuff. What they go into is after that point. Excuse me. What they go into after that point is just sort of is keeping an eye on me. They call it surveillance. So I said, can we name it something else? I've been a subject of surveillance way back. That's an interesting story. I'll tell that one here in a second. I'll give you the short version. Surveillance. Anyhow. So I asked her about my blood work and if there are markers that we keep track of to get an idea of where my cancer is, and she says yes and no. The CEA is one of them, and don't ask me what the hell it is. I'll put it up on the screen later, but you can look at it. I'm sure there's a handful of you that are very smart that will figure it out. But I'm not saying the other handful aren't smart. Sorry. There's the one handful who's very good at Google, who will stop at no ends to figure out what the heck it is. Sorry. Anyhow, that marker was normal for me to begin with, so there's really no way to tell if it's normal now. It's in other words, it's at the same level. She's saying that if that marker was, rather than up to 4, 5 being normal for them, if it was up to 4 or more, and it went up to 50, then that would be an obvious indication that something's awry. Anyhow, I never had that. That marker never got up to those levels because they caught me so early. It's impossible to tell at this point what's happening with that marker. So she says after everything's done, in a few months they'll have me in for Follow up. I'm going to have follow up colonoscopies every year for the next 5 years, which is no big deal. It's simple. If you haven't had one, guys, get it. It's no big deal. You're out the whole time. There's no embarrassment. There's nothing emasculating about it whatsoever. You're not going to come out a different person if you have a colonoscopy. Just get it done, please. And then I go in for a CAT scan in November to kind of get an idea what's happening down there, see if there's any growths coming back. And all they do is keep track of me for a while. And Aunt Carol gave me a really, really good suggestion on making sure that instead of going to once a year, go for every 6 months for the entire 5 years. I don't want to mess around with this. And she's right. She's absolutely right. Dr. Kozin said initially you'll go every few months for a follow-up, which is 4 follow-ups a year. And then after that you go every 6 months for another year. And then after that you go once a year. But I kind of agree with her. Thank you, Carol. I'm going to kind of push that along, and because I'm paying for it. I mean, I've got insurance, and as long as I pay the insurance, there should be no reason why they wouldn't see me, right? Anyhow, so all really good news this week. No reason to go back, no reason for me to trip out. At this point, it's just getting back to what my new normal was before radiation. Now, the two things that I wanted to follow up on was one, the loose stool situation. When I told her that I had been going, my new life, I had been going maybe 6 times a day, number 2. And which is no big deal. It's not a whole bunch different than what it was before. Before, once a day, twice a day, whatever. It was just like normal folks. So I got up to 6, but then I didn't even realize that it was even up to 6. I was going when I had to go, so I got used to that. Lately, since radiation, it's been more like 8 or 10. And I hadn't even really noticed that until I brought it up to her, and she said it's probably because the radiation is irritating your bowels. Because all that stuff is getting concentrated radiation, that's why you end up with the loose stools or diarrhea. So they aren't necessarily, it's not even necessarily diarrhea, it's just often. And so she's saying that should dissipate after I'm done and I'll get back to my new life, my old new life, towards about 5-6 times a day. And some days it's not. Some days it's just 2, just like normal folks. But there's really no, I really hadn't even noticed that it had increased. So she says probably because my insides are a little bit irritated over what's happening under that big, huge machine. Sorry guys, sorry to cut in. I totally got done with everything and realized that I had left out that I had actually seen the dermatologist yesterday. So when I left Dr. Kozin's office on Wednesday, I called them like, hey, I asked her, can I go see the dermatologist now? Because I had an appointment with them scheduled for last November, when I realized what was really happening, so I had to cancel it then. Finally got in to see them yesterday. Awesome. Dr. Diane Scott, she had me change into a gown, underwear on, and checked everything. I mean, toes even. She checked my feet, head, ears, just everything. And asked me about the spot that I was most concerned about, which was that spot above my eye that got dark for a while. She said it was nothing, no big deal, it's lighter now, and I asked her why, and explained that it started getting lighter after the chemo infusion started. And she said that's about average, about normal, because the chemo infusion goes and targets bad cells, unhealthy cells, and that's what that kills, and that could have been part of it. They don't have, the chemo infusion medication doesn't have a roadmap to go exactly to this spot, it just goes throughout your whole body. So that made sense. I knew it was the reason why, but I wanted to make sure to go and check anyway. A couple of the other areas I was concerned about on my face that just drive me nuts, like a couple of skin tag areas that I hate. She said that they are a plastic surgeon's thing. They're basically not covered under insurance because they're cosmetic. They're considered cosmetic. Whatever, it's all good. I'll see a plastic surgeon when I win the lottery. I got my ticket. So anyhow, that's all good. No issues skin-wise there. She says if it comes back and it gets darker again and I'm concerned, they can biopsy it then, but she doesn't see any reason to look at it now. Just kind of keep an eye on it, like everything. Anyway, Back to your regularly scheduled program. Back to your regularly scheduled programming. Sorry, it's early. Second item I wanted to discuss was surveillance. A lot of you know me. A lot of you are family. You know what my life was like growing up and the people I used to run around with. And I always say I wasted a really good opportunity for a high school education on foosball. Because we would ditch class a lot and go over to a place in Albuquerque called Iceland. Iceland was the local hangout for all us goofy kids who were ditching class who'd go do stupid stuff. Stupid. And we go in there and waste our money on foosball. I got really good at foosball. But there was the high school, the narc. Everybody had their high school narc who just kind of kept an eye on everybody, and you always knew that he was watching everything you did. And he'd show up all over the place because he didn't necessarily have to stay at the school. He had to be where the kids were to keep an eye on them to make sure they were cool. Not until my dad died, and not until I was going through some of the stuff that he left for me, did I find a letter from the school where they had been watching me from high school, where this narc had been watching me. It came up with a full report. It's like a 4-page report on what I was doing. Well, I just thought he was a cool narc. Duh, we were stupid. But anyway, that's my pointer surveillance. There have been other times, I'm sure, but that was the one where I didn't know it. Most of the time you know when you're being watched, but that one I was totally oblivious because I was an idiot. Huge idiot. A lot of you know that. Anyhow, that's that brought up that memory right away as soon as she said surveillance. I said, is there another word we could use? So, and no, by the way, it was a lot of kids were doing it. I was smoking cigarettes and smoking weed, drinking beer. Miller Lite at the time. I don't know why I did that. I was living the high life, the champagne of beers. Anyhow, it was stupid. So, the other part is last week. We ended up going to Pride on Saturday, which was an absolute freaking blast. Joelle and I had so much fun. We got there a little bit late for the parade. We were walking up 6th Avenue towards where we always watch the parade from, and we saw what I knew was Raul, and I had seen him a couple of 100 yards behind. Like, is that Raul? That is Raul. I knew by the way he walked. Knew it. He was walking really good. Your knee's doing great, homeboy, because it was hard to catch up with you. Anyway, ran into Raul, gave him a big hug, hi, la la la, love Raul. So then me, Joelle, and Raul went over to see Will, who lives right on the parade route. And Will's lived there Will's lived there forever, but he was telling me he had never seen the parade because of all the hoopla and the noise and everything else, that he'd always just get a room at a Hilton or something and spend the weekend there and relax, rather than putting up with the loud, raucous parade, which is literally going across his front yard. I mean, there's the street, there's about 35 feet of yard and his apartment. And it's all single pane windows out here, folks. It doesn't get cold enough for double pane. But I can imagine what that sound is like in his apartment. So a lot of the neighbors around there decorate their porches and their front yards, and they have little parties. So Will had a photo booth set up where you could take pictures. I sent some to a few of the family out there. I'll throw a couple up here. And they had food, they had a cooler, they had a barbecue, and that was just their party for their little friends. They had it decorated, they had a bunch of pride flags and stuff, and Will is a very conservative gentleman, and he was blown away by how much fun he actually had. There was that initial, I don't want to be a part of that. It's wild and it's raucous and it's not for me. Turns out he had a freaking blast. We had talked a handful of times during the day, and he was having a good time. So much so that he was wrangling people into their photo wall for me to take pictures of him. So him and I sort of had a little hustle going on there where he'd bring them over and I'd grab their phone and take pictures of the whole group rather than one person leaving the group to take pictures. We had it nailed. Must have taken, I don't know, Will, 100, you think, bud? It was a bunch. I had a great time. Put in some, so when Joelle and I do that, we always make some margaritas in the water water canisters or whatever, water bottles. And we finished those, had a couple of beers over at Will's place. And then Wendy came and joined us too. So she always goes to the parade too. So she was, hey, where are you guys at? We're here. Came up and met us. And that was the group for the rest of the day. John Monty was there with us too. I had never met him before. I heard him on the radio forever and ever and ever. He and Will are really good friends. So we had a great little group going on. John's daughter was there as well. Anyway, so we'd walk around to a few of the neighbors that we knew. Victor lives 2 doors away. He's a good homeboy from the area too. He's a nice guy. So back and forth, and we actually saw the end of the parade this year. We hadn't seen that parade, the entire parade ever. It's a 3.5-hour parade. It's just long. Went up to New News after that, and that was all she wrote. We had a couple of beers there, and we were done by 4. It was so much dang fun. We had a blast. Anyhow, hope you guys had the same sort of weekend. This weekend, a little bit less going on. That was wild. Anyhow, that's it, folks. That's all for today. Thank you so much for all those wonderful thoughts and prayers and good wishes and the cool stuff. I really appreciate it. I hear lots of good things out there. I hear that these videos are reaching people that I had no idea were reaching. So I appreciate you passing them to those people who need them. Cancer is just not like it was in the movies anymore. It's just, there are people that I see when I go in for my appointments that are really having a difficult time, and I go out of my way to make sure I say something positive to them. Because cancer can get really lonely. And when you don't have that support system, and when you don't have people around you that are giving you that, hey, what's up, how's everything going? Ran into Matt at my office this week. He wanted to know how things were going. Philip, they subscribed to the channel because they wanted to see the videos. But I know there are people out there who don't have that support, and I think about those people a lot. It's tough. Just thinking about what they could possibly be going through makes me emotional because I see them and they sit there and there's a blank stare in their faces before they go in for treatment, where you know that nobody's there with them. It's obviously nobody's there with them because nobody's there with them. Joel's been by my side the entire time, except for radiation. But if you know somebody that's going through it and somebody that's it's happening to, take a second, man. Just make that quick phone call. Hey, just checking in on you. Heard from Mike Silva this week. How you doing, brother? It feels good when you guys reach out, and I appreciate that you do reach out, and I appreciate that you do keep in touch. But if you know somebody who is going through it that you haven't contacted, reach out to them. It's a bitch, man. Anyway, have a great weekend. Take care of each other. Onward. We're going onward, baby.